So the name of this is Broadcast from Home, our accelerated workflow transformation. And we say accelerated because we kind of figured that a lot of stations are doing more work along these lines. And not everybody, but my own small radio stations, we were trying to do more things in a more efficient way, and certainly had people voice tracking from all over the country. And with this COVID just sped that process up. It also sped up the process of perhaps virtualizing more things. There's just a picture for me and Gibson. Gibson is the Director of Engineering and Technology at WTVF, the CBS affiliate here in Nashville. And I'm the Senior Solutions Consultant at the Telos Alliance. Well, you may remember back in March of this year, way back in March, radio stations across the USA and indeed around the world were told to evacuate their offices and studios. They were told that a lockdown of businesses would last only a couple weeks, perhaps a month, in order to flatten the curve or stop the spread. WJOL in Joliet, Illinois, posted this on their website, closed until April 1st. So the problem was to set up home studios, do it quickly, and make it work. And so broadcast engineers did what they're naturally good at, and that's coming up with solutions to problems. They had to set up home studios, they had to do it quickly, and they had to make it work. The solutions varied widely, as we're about to see. Different formats, music, news, talk, sports, interview shows. The solutions varied, and the flows varied quite a lot. Now, we all know that radio, in some senses, can be kind of easy to do. Really, you just need a desk or your lap, a mic preamp, a USB converter, a laptop computer, and good internet, and you can do it all. In fact, my podcast, This Week in Radio Tech, the setup isn't much more than this. It's amazing what we've done for the last 11 years just from our home studios. And Chris Tobin is often on location at different sites when he's on the show, which is almost every week. You can even build a home studio in a hotel room. So this is a little mic setup with for voiceover work from a hotel room. Some stations did a little bit more, though. This is Reef FM in the Caribbean. I don't think this is their normal broadcast studio. I was told this is a home studio. A little elaborate for a home studio, but somebody brought in a bunch of monitors and computers and a little analog mixing console and doing their broadcasting from home. When this hit, between myself and the Telos Alliance support team, we spoke with and met online with literally hundreds of engineers and other radio professionals in just a couple weeks. The Telos support team assisted with remote operations, codec configuration, advice on IP networking, firewall issues, and they shared ideas to help broadcasters get on the air from their temporary home studios. And so what we're going to do in this hour, we're going to hear from 14 different broadcast engineers. Some of their experiences will likely mimic their own. There are, however, some surprises, as I found out talking with them, as well as some excellent advice born out of clever solutions to problems that they faced. So were temporary solutions okay for the long term? Have we found some better techniques? And what about COVID-20? What about next time? We're going to share their answers with you. And so without a lot of introduction, here we go. This is Chris Tobin. You may know Chris from being on my podcast. WBGO is where he works in the New York City market. Chris makes this sound easy. I got to tell you, it wasn't easy. They were really, as we say in the South, they were stepping and fetching for a few days to get things going because they had been live on all their shifts. They weren't automated at all until COVID hit. But listeners and patrons say the hosts have never sounded as good.
Well, the impact to us was actually minimal. We moved everyone off-site, all the announcers. The music continues to play. They continue to produce it. It's voice-tracked. We're using a lot of remote access materials. So as far as the workflow, the only difference is we're not physically together in the building. Otherwise, everything else is as it has been. I know that because we have many listeners, many members who have written to us asking how we're rotating announcers through the building with this pandemic situation back in March. And we explained to them that we're not. They're doing it from home. Every response from the 200 emails was, wow, I had no idea that you were not even in the building. So I'm thinking that was our best way of measuring our success to getting off site in less than 6 days and getting everybody up and running as if we never left.
So the live show producers at some stations, though, still need to be in the studio. This is Ted Johnson. He owns. He's been on the air at lots of stations. He's done all kinds of things, including executive producer at Jam Creative Productions in Dallas. But for him and his small sports talk station, doing call screening and setting up interviews still had to be done at the station. He really didn't have a way to do that from home.
Screen the phone calls. They communicate with the host at home, set up their interviews. When they've got coaches, they track down the coach and get them on for them. And, they're doing a lot. Plus, they chop up interviews and segments and the full hour and post them on social media. Everything we do is either chopped into interviews with the talent and their guests, or their whole hour goes up on social media. You and I have talked in the past about virtual studios and doing it off the cloud and everything else. All of that we could have done except for the phone situation. And I haven't found a good solution to being able to remote control, answer, screen, and do everything on a phone call for when you're doing it at home all by yourself.
So this is Paul Montoya. He's at Wyoming Public Media. They're a very full-service outfit with 4 different formats and services that they push out from Laramie. Some reporters were already remote, though, Wyoming being such a big state, and they really do miss their social interaction, though. Here's Paul.
And into April, everybody was so freaked out and staying at home that, we were doing probably 90% of any of the on-air stuff from home, including even live shows. The most live shows now are typically done in studio, but, we have all the processes. Typically, nobody in studio with someone else while they're on the air. Even with interviews, if we had to have an interview, like we had primaries and there might have been 2 people in studio, we had to have the plexiglass shield. Things that, you just don't ever think are going to be something necessary in radio broadcasting. We've got a unique situation in that we've got 4 audio channels, 4 different audio formats that we use at Wyoming Public Radio. We have the main channel, Wyoming Public Radio. It's the NPR News. We have 9 reporters, so we had to take that into consideration, how they were going to operate. Some of the reporters, though, already were operating remotely. We're a pretty large state, so we have a few that are scattered around, and they were automatically self-isolated from the very beginning. Then we have a classical channel, a jazz channel, and then we have a AAA channel where typically most of the people voice track. I do the morning show on that channel, and a lot of times I'll do it live, and a lot of times I'll voice track it. If I voice track, I try to voice track within the hour I'm in. That really required, between our reporters in the field, a lot of the production people, our traffic people for all of the traffic scheduling and so forth, are typically working out of home. Our digital manager works out of home. So it was a total shift that direction beginning in March. And a lot of those functions we still do remotely. I still do the morning show for the AAA format here in this home studio.
A lot of you may know Charlie Wooten. He's in Panama City, Florida. It's a smallish market, but they really have some big market shows. Their morning show on one station especially. But Charlie suffers from no modern equipment, or very little, in his facility. So board ops were still needed to handle their older console and older phone system.
We've found some novel ways to do some things, still requiring a board operator for our morning show. We don't have newer consoles in the smaller market where we could IP into the console and operate it remotely. So we're having to have a board op, but at the same time we're able to have guests, and we're able to have multiple people on the show, not in the control room, but it's worked out very well. And we're using, believe it or not, Microsoft Teams. And I am amazed at the audio quality of Microsoft Teams. We're using it. Everybody has a iRig. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Sure, yeah.
And they plug it into their phone, and That way they have return audio, and they have a decent microphone. And we have found that these things work amazingly well with on an iPhone or an Android device with Microsoft Teams. Back to the studio with a desktop in the studio with Microsoft Teams loaded on it and feeding the board, and then the board feeding a mix minus back out to the other people. And
this is Chris Starr. He's in Wisconsin, a multi-market station group. They do remote voice tracking. They just elected not to do anything live, mostly because they knew that there would be dropouts from some sketchy home internet connections.
Well, essentially, we use Simian for our automation system, and they have a remote voice tracking package. So what we've done is set up our trackers or our announcers with an RE20 microphone, a DBX mic processor, and a Focusrite interface to hook up to their computers. And they can see what's coming up in the hour, and a lot of them will basically just maybe look an hour ahead and drop the tracks in. However, they've also been known to, they maybe do an hour ahead, but then change it. Something happens or news breaks or the weather changes or something like that, and they jump back in and update their voice tracks.
Chris Tobin described how they actually got laptops out to people and why they did it the way they did it, with the station providing those laptops.
The home setup is a laptop provided by the station, so I have control of what's in it, what's on it. I don't have to worry about them sharing it with their family needs. That was the first thing we did. So they have two laptops at home. They're personal. They do whatever they want with it. And then ours, which is for pretty much broadcast. So that's the first step. Second step was a USB microphone that we felt had the sonic quality representative of what we normally sound like. So as we discovered, it was transparent to the audience. And the second thing after that were a pair of headphones of their choosing, so they choose their own. And that's it. The software is VPN software to the studio servers to get certain things. We have audio automation. The server automation has a VPN client built into it, so everything is remoted. The only heavy lifting is them putting on a pair of headphones and talking to the microphone. Everything else is done at our studio facilities in the server rack room.
Some of you know Geary Morrill, their COVID response, he says, simply compressed their work-home timelines. In fact, it was his comment that kind of gave me the idea for the title of this. They do voice track most shifts and certainly use VPN.
We haven't made a lot of changes. We were in pretty good shape to be able to do what needed to happen when all this happened. We just didn't know the timeline was going to be so compressed. But we were at that time, and I think you and I talked about this, we were one of the early adopters for Wide Orbit's 4.0 software. And so that has built-in remote capability on it. And so we were able to put that to task. And, primarily all we needed to do was be able to set up some individual logins so we could do VPNs and be able to give people access both through their laptops and through, in this case, Wide Orbit 4.0 works off of an iPad very nicely. It's an easy to use interface. They can control the station. They can add stuff on the fly. They can even do stuff in the background and just load audio into that.
Well, this is Josh Bone. He takes care of some stations, and they really kind of made a mistake at first, and Josh describes that. For him, a mesh VPN solved their multi-access confusion.
Initially, the setup for my major client was, here, let's grab all the tie line gear that we have and send it out with the jocks and let them do their shows on it from home. And that was all just set up, that's designed for remotes. It's used, once or twice a week, and you've just got a port open for it. Not that big a deal. But that was something that was a less than ideal solution, especially for our multi-person morning show. And we played with a couple of different conferencing apps. We ended up trying one, but we could never really get the mix minus right. And then what we ultimately ended up doing was setting up a Cradlepoint mesh VPN using all the MaxConnect routers that the customer has, and we sent some home with the customers, and we were able to set that up so they plug their Cradlepoint in, the MaxConnect lights up, gets them on the LTE network, and then the VPN mesh puts itself together So they can carry that to wherever they are, whether they want to do it from their bedroom, their kitchen, if they want to go to their neighbor's house, if they want to sit on their back deck, they plug it in and it puts them on that VPN. Then they can connect their codec directly to the studio end, and we have all the mix minuses set up. So that's working well, and that's far more secure than constantly relying on just an open port. That's been the main thing that we've done to secure our stuff.
Checking back in with Paul Montoya, he said that they had full control of their existing Axia consoles from everywhere, and that allowed the staff to work as if they were there.
We're set up now for any of the live functions where we have a Fusion console, and we actually can remote control the console using soft surface, and that's been a godsend. Just being able to do things like that on a spur of the moment, if we have to go live with anything, not having to go to the studio. I would say something like that could continue into the future, because in times where we don't have anybody at the studio and something comes up, you can actually go live from just about anywhere.
Paul reminds us of something that we learned in public radio, because they seem to do this a lot, and that's double ender recordings. And guess what? They're easy with today's smartphones.
You know, a lot of people don't know that they have a recorder built in their phone, and if they're doing an interview, they just ask the person, well, hit your record button on your recorder on your phone, and then when we're done, just send me the interview, and then they naturally match it up. They do a time sync and match it up for the interview. So people are being very creative. I would say, though, that the main drawback is more social rather than technical.
You know, Rob Bertrand is the engineer at WAMU. They have a complicated format to do remotely, but he says they've been doing 100% remote. Now they've started to return to the studio more recently, but they've built a lot of custom panels to remote control just what producers needed to from their homes.
I think it's really a testament to the flexibility of audio over IP technology that we have been able to stand up in just a very rapid amount of time, stand up an entire radio station that is operating completely remotely, 100% remotely, with nobody in the building on a regular basis. And that would not have been possible without audio over IP and without the flexibility of routing platforms like Pathfinder and the ability to build custom panels and deploy that throughout our staff. We've really appreciated what we've gotten out of these platforms that do so much for us on a daily basis while we're in the studio. It's been pretty amazing to see them be able to deliver a whole new life for all of us working from home.
Well, different shows, have different workflows, actually. You know, they do the Diane Rehm show there, but they do other complex shows as well. Guests set up in remote screening, they can actually do that from their homes.
The biggest challenge to booking all these guests remotely is actually just managing that audio. So we have somebody whose full-time job it is right now to test with every guest in advance of the show, the day before or a couple of days before, and then actually manage those connections in the course of the show. And that has continued to work out pretty well for us. One of our talk shows, we have brought largely in-house. The host and the engineer are in-house. The line producer continues to function remotely. All of her phone screening continues to happen remotely, as does social media screening. So that's sort of a hybrid. And then we have another show that is being produced entirely remotely still. And we haven't changed too much since we launched this initially. We've tweaked a couple of things along the way. One of the interesting things in public media is the sort of the staple of the fundraising campaign. And we've done one. We're about to go into our next fundraising campaign. And we're used to bringing parading staff through the studio when we're there in the building. And we are using audio over IP to do that remote contribution of all the different people who will pitch during the fundraising campaign throughout the station. And have built some custom panels using Pathfinder in Axia to be able to communicate with all of those folks and let the producers talk to different people in their ear. And it's really been pretty fascinating doing that, especially not using hard codecs at people's homes and instead using these software codecs in smartphones.
So what have we learned that we were kind of ready for this, and we didn't really realize it so much. You just need mics, headphones, mic to USB adapters, and audio codecs at people's homes. And then for IT, of course, laptops, desktop, phone, a home, or it could be a wireless carrier if you have a good quality signal, or using something like a Max Connect, which gives you prioritized data. Remote access software, of course, is critical, and there's all different choices there. And then, as Charlie Wooten said, you can use conferencing software, or that they were, to do a multi-person morning show, and everybody could participate with that. Well, it's time to turn our attention over to the TV station. I'm going to quit screen sharing, actually, at this point, and let's see, and let Gibson spend a few minutes telling you about what they have done at WTVF, some of the challenges, and what happened, what they found out along the way. And Gibson, I don't have any slides for you, so if you just want to be conversational and let us know how you guys did it.
Yeah, so in early March, we were hit by a tornado here at our TV station, and the city of Nashville, in particular, on I think it was March the 5th. So we were in sort of the predictable wall-to-wall news coverage across our market. The tornado had a footprint that went about 75 miles west to east. And so we were covering all over the market, sort of what a big TV station does, covering news events. And we had to pivot very, very quickly from doing this sort of, high-touch, staff-intensive tornado coverage to being able to look and say, all right, well, how do we get everybody out of the building? We really had three classes of people. We had people who say they were account executives, they were in our sales department or in an administrative function, who already were equipped with laptops. And that was a choice that our company had made several years ago to try to get everybody on laptops. And I actually resisted that a little bit because for some of our news department, the processing power that they needed on a laptop or on a computer at their desk really necessitated having a more powerful desktop. So we only had about half the building, maybe less than that, probably 30%, 40% of the building, maybe out of 150 employees, only 30 or 40% were equipped with laptops. We were able to get them out of the building very quickly. We had a corporate VPN solution using software from Juniper, which I think is now called Pulse Secure. And that was an existing workflow. Those people knew how to do their tasks remotely. They could interact with clients. We efforted to try to get IP phones on their laptops so they could take their desktop phones to their house. Some of them were interested in that. Most of them were not. Most of them, as account executives, just continued to use their cell phones to communicate with the clients. But as we looked at the larger task of getting the technical operations, the news gathering and engineering and production operational people out of the building, we were fortunate to have a stack of laptops that we could deploy to our producers, got them out of the building, send them home. Out of 150 people, we only had one person, one that I'm aware of, who didn't have a good, solid, working home internet connection. And we had some with different quality of connections, but we only had one person who actually had to go purchase a home internet connection. And that's, which I thought was, well, it is what it is. It's just that not everybody comes equipped with home internet. So as we put people out of the building, it became apparent to our company that a single sourced or a two-sourced VPN appliances that were running in our corporate office and then bringing all the traffic back, say from wherever the employee was, back to our market, was more than a bit constraining. And so leveraging the power of VMware and virtual servers, we were able to install in a matter of about 2 hours VPN appliances at all of our stations across the country. And the company I work for is EW Scripps, and at the time owned about 60 stations in 43 markets, including one in New York City. So everybody got a local VPN appliance installed in a couple of hours, and it's a very simple task to point our staff to connect to the local market as opposed to connecting to the corporate VPN. which still exists, but it's we've tried to push people so that they connect to the station in which they work, and that does a number of things, but most notably reduces the bandwidth requirements across the corporate wide area network. Then we looked at what tasks people are doing. People who were producers needed to write their scripts, and in our case, we use Avid's iNews software for scripts, which works very well over a low bandwidth connection like a VPN. It's not a high bandwidth software. We also had Avid's Media Central, which is a web-enabled platform that gets people in to see their video, to see all the content, and they can watch and make some rudimentary edits. But the big struggle was looking at our video people, the people who were either shooting content or who were editing content. And that fell in two categories: people who were photographers, who had a camera and who would shoot their own content. So they had content that they had locally that they needed to edit on their laptops. Most of those people already had laptops, some did not. We were able to, through some wise acquisitions, places like Costco and CDW, I didn't ever have to go to Walmart or Best Buy, but I was able to track down enough hardware, and we ended up buying some things like high-end gaming computers because, in a pinch, you just try to find something with the processing power that meets your needs. So we crafted a solution for people who were shooting their content, and they would edit it on their laptops and then send it back to the station either via FTP or some other method. We took all of the existing infrastructure that we had that would watch the incoming video. So when they would drop an FTP clip into a folder on the server, we had a transcode server watching that FTP account that said, oh, all right, well, there's new content here. Let me transcode it, bring it into our play-to-air system. So we, took a fairly simplified workflow that they were already editing in the field and added a few little hooks to it so they could get video directly into the on-air playback servers. People who were editing content that was in the building, however, say like what we call a show editor, someone who is editing things that maybe come from our network or come from another photographer, something that they didn't shoot themselves, but they're editing for a given show. We discovered that most of what they needed was already on the computers that they used to work on, the sort of high horsepower workstation grade computers that were in the building. So we just gave them remote access to those machines. We started out with VNC, which is a free software. VNC works very well for sharing multiple people on the same account, on the same machine, but it does not pass audio. And so we were able to then move to Microsoft Windows Remote Desktop, which of course is built into Windows. And most of our editing software was already Windows based. So for us, that was a simple thing. They were able to hear the audio of the things they were editing. And they basically have can work with a relatively low horsepower computer at their home. Some of them had laptops. Most of them we gave desktops to because we were anticipating them needing relatively high horsepower machines to do localized video editing. And it became apparent that no, what they really needed was just a machine with two monitors that they could remote desktop in and watch and work on an asset that was in our building. So was there ever a time that we got everybody out of the building? There were a couple of days. Out of 150 employees, there were a couple of days where we might have had one person, two people. In Tennessee and in the city of Nashville, broadcasting was considered an essential operation, so we were permitted to be in our building from a legal perspective. We needed to protect our employees. We still need to protect our employees, so we have a very limited staff. I would say not more than 10 people on most days in the building, spread across roughly 45,000 square feet. So there's a lot of space per person. But there are still challenges. And as everybody knows, there are challenges as the pandemic drags on. There are things that we used to do with multiple people. And sometimes those things, given the weight of an item or given the complexity of something, sometimes still needs two people to accomplish. And we've been very good about having all of our staff work remotely. And actually, we leveraged a number of different platforms. I mean, we leveraged YouTube for people to watch our control room monitor walls from home. And we found that we could run a YouTube stream in a private unlisted URL in their ultra low delay mode, and we could get about a 1.7 second time from our control room to people's houses. And are there faster ways to do that? Yeah, there probably are. I mean, that was one of our struggles, was how to get people who are not in the building connected in near real time. Because they're used to sitting in a room or several rooms, all watching multi-viewers, all watching the same content. And as we started putting people remote, we realized that the encoding delays, those 4-second, 8-second delays that we're all so used to when we watch remote video, that really doesn't work if you're trying to collaborate. You're trying to work and communicate in near real time. So some of the other members of our company have used essentially security codecs that are motion JPEG but are take NTSC video or SDI, but generally just NTSC video, and can distribute it out with under 200 milliseconds of latency. So it's very, very watchable from home. Somebody can actually watch a teleprompter. There's talent that can work over teleprompter remotely. Then we looked at getting all of our talent out of the building, how to have our anchors work from home. And so with each anchor, we tried to have a similar solution. As most TV stations these days operate, we have a number of IP codecs, generally centered around backpacks, where people are carrying a backpack from TVU or LiveView or maybe DeGero, where it's a bonded cellular connection, 5, 6, 7 IP codecs or IP modems from different carriers, Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, all bonding their IP together to get enough bandwidth to carry video. But those have a pretty high price tag in terms of putting a news gathering resource in somebody's home like that. It didn't seem like to me to be the best expenditure of time or money. So we leveraged cell phones, took a lot of iPhones, people who, as you know, an iPhone camera is quite good these days. Software from TVU and companies like LiveView have iPhone contribution software, iPhone and Android, by the way. So contribution software that takes a person's cell phone and can use their own cell phone, their own cellular data connection, as well as bond it to any Wi-Fi they might be near. So we bought, sort of probably like many people, looking around Amazon, looking around the internet, buying ring lights, buying iPhone stands, buying tripods to hold an iPad, things that trying to leverage all the cameras that people had, everything that they already had that can make video. So along the way, we sort of hit the limit of how many things can an iPhone do at one time? How many things can you do at once on your iPad? So we found that you can pretty reliably shoot video on an iPad or iPhone, and maybe even use that same device for an IFB device where it's connected on an intercom system through an IP intercom system to deliver audio back to the talent. Is that really the best use of it? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe there's a second device. Maybe they're shooting with an iPhone and using an iPad, or maybe using a laptop. We've got several staff members who have laptops at their home set up with teleprompting software. And what we found is that each person, depending upon each remote talent's personal comfort, and some of them have spouses or significant others or children who are very helpful in terms of, yeah, I can help you with this or with that, because we're not able to go into these people's homes. So we can often take a box to their front porch and ring the doorbell and say, here's your stuff, but you have to take it in and set it up. We stumbled on some things, sure. I mean, we found things that we didn't anticipate. We had people who were paying for what they considered to be the best internet connection that their provider would give people in cable modems, or probably it was mostly cable modems, or there were a couple with phone line based solutions that were mostly old DSL connections. People who thought that they were getting a good connection, then when we tried to run video over it, and they were paying for something that was 150 megabytes down and 20 megs up, they were getting something like a tenth of that. And so we had people, we would. I got involved in a couple of tech support calls as a third party caller to their own internet provider, trying to convince the internet provider to come out and solve the problem. And they usually did. They found problems on poles and problems, with things not being connected properly. So you end up as a broadcast engineer troubleshooting things that just really aren't your ball of wax. They're not your responsibility. And I'm not responsible for somebody's home internet connection, but I found myself inserting myself as a technology solutions architect into their system to try to make the end product work.
We found that as well in our company, and your internet thing is a good one. So you might have the speed up and down at the router, but when they're trying to do it on Wi-Fi from across the house through a bunch of plaster and lath walls that don't transmit through, it's certainly a challenge. So
yeah, for us, I've taken a not insignificant amount of time to say, let's get you on a wired Ethernet connection.
Yeah, exactly.
Wi-Fi is nice, but we can't rely on it.
That's Gibson, my own mantra after having done 514 episodes of This Week in Radio Tech with, hundreds of guests. My mantra nowadays is nobody's Wi-Fi is as good as they think it is. It just isn't.
That's the mantra.
Yeah. Hey, I've just got a couple slides we'll finish up with here. I just want to mention Steve Church, the founder of Telos, and it was always his vision, or at least since about 1999, that things should just interoperate. And that's, of course, what led to Livewire, and that's, of course, what led to AES 67. This is a piece of software that Paul Montoya mentioned. This has been actually out for about 7 or 8 years now. It's called Soft Surface. It lets you control existing Axia Element and Fusion consoles, but this is what some people are using. We have a new thing that is coming down the pike, going to be available. Actually, it's available right now in a beta version. This is a mix engine in your facility that's totally networked, and then it's totally HTML5 in the browser. So you can actually go in with a cell phone or a tablet or your computer and just open up after you get through the credential process, you can do your mixing quite remotely from this. We even discovered that, maybe a fader knob isn't the best thing. Maybe we just make that big long bar there. You can touch anywhere there and bring the fader up and down, either touch or use your mouse. So we're kind of learning things about doing stuff on a touch screen. And some of my I skipped a bunch of my interviewees because we're out of time, but people have said, 6 months ago, if you asked one of our jocks, hey, would you use a touchscreen instead of an actual audio console, they'd say, oh no, I need the knobs. But having done things from home on a computer, they say, it's not so bad. I could use a touchscreen. This is an IP-based intercom system called the Telos Infinity. There are certainly Opus codec links to use it remotely, and also it's capable of carrying contribution quality audio too. All of the audio over the IP network is full 20 kilohertz audio, so you can put one of these, a belt pack or a panel somewhere, and not only have intercom to a camera person or whatever you have, but you can also have actually contribution quality audio running over this. I want to mention one more thing, and that is my colleagues at Telos have really upped the game in the support page at support.telosalliance.com. There's a plain language search function where you can help me with and type in your question there. And it's really amazing. We've written a whole lot of articles, I think close to 400 or 500 now, that are really helpful. Type in, how do I do call screening remotely? And yep, we've got a whole article written by our VoIP guru, Sean Dolan, on how to do call screening remotely. And that was one of the pain points that a number of broadcasters have had, that they didn't have a good way to do that remotely. So that's my presentation, and I sure thank you all for attending and your time. And if we have time for any questions, we'd certainly be glad to address them.
Yes,
Conrad?
Kirk, thank you. I certainly appreciate that. The presentation is something I could relate completely to, because we faced all of those same challenges that all of your interviewees had faced here at Cumulus too. So it was right on the money. And Gibson, thank you for the television perspective and point of view. That was interesting to hear. We saw a lot of the late night TV shows, operating from home with iPhones. It was pretty amazing that something that can fit in your pocket was actually producing contribution video for over the air on networks. So pretty amazing stuff. So with that, I'll open it up for Q&A if there's anybody on the call that has any questions for Kirk or Gibson or comments.
I want to say it's great. I thought that we had our winner for longest distance, but here comes Pierre Lone Wolf from Kotzebue, Alaska. Hey, Pierre, good to see you.
Hello there. How are you doing?
I'm good. Did I pronounce Kotzebue correctly?
Yes, Kotzebue or Tikitagruk in the traditional Inupiaq language.
I'll go with the former.
I would have had my camera on sooner, but I was in the shower when I joined the meeting, so I didn't think of it.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Pierre.
And Scott is here as well. Scott, I never know how to pronounce your last name. Would you jump in and say it for me? It's a question in my brain. You're muted, Scott.
There it is. There we go. I'm an on-air talent. I'm not an engineer, but it's Colombe, and I'm down in very cold Redwood Falls, Minnesota.
Good deal. Well, good. We can add you to the.
One thing I would say to everybody, and I think what I've heard is that this is not going away when the pandemic is over.
Mm-hmm.
That I think, are we going to put some people back in the building? Yeah. I mean, there is a real need. There's a community. There's something we get. There's a synergism of having people work together. But I don't think you're going to suddenly start see network TV talk shows, whether they're news or entertainment, are going to start rolling satellite trucks back out to people's houses, or booking studio time to bring talent in for a 2-minute live hit. I think you're gonna continue seeing Zoom calls and Teams and WebEx. And I think you're gonna keep seeing those on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. I think you're gonna see that sort of news contribution, and I think it's gonna continue, in our facilities. I think we're gonna see, Conrad, you're probably gonna be asked for your staff. How can I work from home? Or
I think that we've proven that we can do it. And
right.
So because we've proven that we can do it, it's something that, like you said, we probably won't give up even after the pandemic subsides. So it's definitely a sea change shift in the way we do business. There's no question about that. So any other questions, anybody?
I thought I'd just add something that, on to Gibson's comments with TV. One of the things that we've found is that while, an iPhone, iPad, whatever, really, crappy camera is acceptable, if you can improve the audio quality with a microphone that is not built into whatever device, it really improves the experience dramatically on the viewer's end. So I would encourage folks to add extra weight to their television solutions to improving the audio experience. It really improves the overall experience, and obviously our eyes are easier to fool than our ears.
The thing that was hard for us to come by, if you're familiar with a modern iPhone or a modern Android, they just have one port on the bottom, Lightning or some sort of USB, and we needed to get a way to keep them powered and to connect with audio. So we were continually searching for. But because that's a great point, we always had microphones. We never used the onboard mic unless that was the only thing, unless it was just absolutely imperative that we have their audio through the onboard mic.
We don't do a lot of Zooms. We don't do a lot of live stuff, everything we've done is really over Zoom, for the most part Zoom, with some other stuff here and there. But, if you've got a laptop, maybe it's not a handheld device, and you can certainly do Bluetooth, but even people with AirPods and just that with an iPhone is significantly better and improves the experience dramatically over just an iPhone or just an iPad. And if you can have some other USB connected camera to a laptop, and even a headset intended for a telephone, that's an 1/8-inch mini with a string and connected, and it's got a little mic on there. It's intended for use with a telephone. That just doing that, which is a $5 fix, really improves things.
Certainly does. Absolutely. I was amazed at the number of people I saw on television wearing the little white AirPod headphones and using those as their mics. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it does a lot better job than the device. And if you can do a lav, it's a plug-in lav to a laptop, that makes it all the better. We've got people using little things. We've got people using lavs. We've got people using earpods and Bluetooth devices, and people using really nice mics with USB adapters as well.
I think that Kirk has the best, though. Still, he wins.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So with that, I think we've gone 5 minutes over, 7 minutes over, and I'm going to wrap it up and start by saying thank you very much again to Kirk and Gibson for spending the time making the time for us today. I also want to give a special shout out to Buck David Waters from Broadcaster General Store, who is a longtime friend of the chapter here in Chapter 15 in New York and a sponsor. Buck, thank you for helping us to pull together today's presentation. Thank you very much. And with that, I will say the mantra is nobody's Wi-Fi is as good as they think it is. Thank you for that, Kirk. And with that, I'll wrap it up and say that we'll see everybody on November 19th, same time. We'll post the Zoom information up on the website, and make sure you visit sbe15.com to get the latest information. And we'll also be sharing our meeting information on social media and also on the members list. We have a remailer, so we'll send it out there as well. So with that, I'll call it a day. So thank you all for attending. Appreciate it very much. We'll see you next
everybody.
month.
Great to see you. Appreciate you.